This is a video with some generic advice on how to set up pedals for synths. We'll be doing a bunch of these videos in the next few months, focusing on several different types of effects. So consider this as an introduction to the series. Let's get started. How should you set up and power your pedals? In front of me, I have what I think is the most efficient way to set up this board. Let's go through it. First off, everything is on the Pedal Train XD18, which is solid, super portable. You could just lug this thing around. It actually also comes with a protective case, which is very useful if you're going to be traveling with these. And you don't have to remove anything from the board in order to put these into the case. In this case, I have 7 units that are Velcroed down to the board. I could obviously switch these out if I'd like very easily. Note that I am not using one of those single cables with multiple 9-volt inputs, mainly because they're just not super reliable. It's really common for one of the inputs on those cables to just like conk out on you, and then you have to do process of elimination, figure out which one, rework the entire cable. It's just messy. This is a much better way of doing it. The Voodoo Lab Pedal Power 3, I've got multiple cables plugged into here, and then it's powering this entire rack. It's zero noise, so you don't have to worry about any sort of like ground issues with it. It saves you a lot of time and headaches, so in my opinion, it's worth it for this sort of thing if you're gonna go for the real thing. In terms of ordering the audio signal of my pedals, I've ordered them in a very specific way. So up here, these are both fully mono, so mono in, mono out. After that, I'm going to the Tricera Chorus, which is mono in, stereo out. And then from the rest of the way, it's fully stereo in, fully stereo out. It's just a lot more organized like this. If I want to skip all of the mono effects, I could just go ahead and do that. So yeah, to me, this is the best approach and just a general understanding of mono versus stereo. And now let's talk about effect order. On this particular board, we don't have any distortion or fuzz pedals, which you would put at the beginning of your chain. Then you might want to place other normally mono pedals, like maybe filters, and then modulation and time-based effects like reverb and delay, which could either be mono or stereo. That being said, that's obviously just a guideline. There's no rigid rules. Follow what your ears tell you depending on your setup. So obviously going through iterations and figuring out what setup works for you as opposed to having to constantly reorder things, that definitely makes things easier. As you can see, there's a lot to this setup, so you want it to be streamlined and simple. Otherwise, you might just be discouraged from starting at all. Going back to the notion of routing, it's simple enough, but I wanted to bring up input and line levels, as well as studio grade versus non-studio grade effects pedals. Studio grade is essentially a buzzword that builders use to indicate that their pedal can be used as an outboard studio effects and sent as a send through, let's say, a mixer like the Model 1.4. Does this mean that non-studio grade pedals can't be used in this way? Well, of course they can, but they're more likely to distort because they're not compatible with line level outputs, which are louder than guitar outputs. In fact, it's likely that its send level will be too low, and when you boost it, that's when you're going to hear unwanted distortion. The word studio grade is not really that important. What's important is that you make sure that the pedals that you buy are compatible with the louder output of a synth, because yes, it's much louder. And so that's called line level compatibility. So we just use this as an effect send. We could of course use it as a master effects as well. Just plug directly into your pedal chain and voila, but you knew that. That's it for today. Hopefully this was helpful to you in some way, and see you in the next one. Oh, and just a reminder, make sure to keep your gear clean.